From the free MCU series we got, Loki was in the middle for me in terms of excitement and anticipation. Of course, I, like everybody else, loved Loki and how he's portrayed by Tom Hiddleston. And you knew it was gonna be some multiverse shenanigans involved in the show. Plus, we've been looking forward to this since Avengers Endgames, as that's when we saw Loki escaping with the Tesseract. And that's exactly where we start the show. I'm just gonna lay out the plot of the first episode, so do not worry, I'm not gonna give out any spoilers. Loki teleports to a Mongolian desert, I believe, and he immediately starts with his speech about his glorious purpose to the people there. When soldiers appear through a gateway, arrest him and take him away. These soldiers are with the TVA, the Time Variance Authority. See, the whole universe moves forward through one timeline, the sacred timeline, and everything is already determined in this timeline. There can be no changes. If someone deviates from their determined path, they're known as a variant, creating a branch in the timeline. If this branch continues past a certain limit, the sacred timeline becomes unstable. More branches start appearing and the whole universe goes to shit. Hence the Timekeepers created the TVA to prevent this from happening. Loki became a variant when he escaped from New York, hence why he was arrested and why he must be purged. In other words, removed from the timeline, in other words, killed. But one of the detectives in the TVA, Mobius, argues that he can be used with the problem they're facing at the moment. Another Loki variant who's been killing any soldiers sent after them. Loki agrees to help capture this variant, but he has his own goal to meet the Timekeepers and try to take over the TVA. So we follow him on this journey as he learns more about the TVA and how it was formed. We get to meet new characters and see how Loki interacts with them and develops a relationship with them. The one thing that I think the show does best is building and adding to the world. Of course, all the MCU series do that, but what's being added here is important and is big. We're not talking small players or little organizations here. This stuff is huge. And the same goes for the consequences of the actions of our characters. Towards the end of the show, the stakes are huge. We're talking about the fate of the universe. And the finale of the show, it sparked the excitement that I didn't really have for MCU's Phase 4. And I like the new characters as well. Mobius is quite a likable character. He's basically that employee in an office who takes his work seriously but is never an asshole about it. He's charismatic, fun, and develops an interesting relationship with Loki, and he's played excellently by Owen Wilson. In addition to being likable, his character develops throughout the show. He learns new things and goes through an arc of his own. So both his character and the role he plays in the story are quite dynamic. Then there is Sylvie, the other Loki variant, the other key player in this story. She's okay. I mean, she has a backstory and all, but I don't know, she had an attitude and determination that made her likable, but it felt superficial. I couldn't say I truly liked her. Perhaps two things contributed to this. One of them being her relationship with Loki. It starts good and interesting, but then it goes in a direction which I didn't buy. I mean, I expected the show to do that. It was sort of cliche, but still, I didn't find it believable. And there's also, that scene. But she's played really well by the actress whose name I unfortunately forgot. I'm really sorry. Then the other characters are okay as well. Some really cool characters show up in the last two episodes, but I'm not gonna outright say who they are or talk about them here. But what about the star of the show? What about Loki himself? I saw a meme before watching the show and it rang true to me after watching it. Basically, it pointed out how before, Tom Hiddleston acted like Loki, but in the show, Loki acts like Tom Hiddleston. It's weird, but that's a good way to put it, really. This Loki is different than the one we've come to know. In the show, Loki is basically the Loki after the events of the first Avengers. You know, where he gouged the guy's eye out, unleashed an alien army on Earth, stabbed his brother, killed Colton. He seemed almost too nice at the beginning of the show. Loki has always been witty and charming despite his intentions, but this just seems like a different Loki. He's been the god of mischief for what, 1,000 years? Then he opens up about himself and his feelings to Mobius, whom he just met in the first or second episode. Again, he's still scheming and everything, but he felt like a pinball, being thrown around by everyone else. Maybe that's part of his theme. You know, how he'll always be a loser or a pawn in someone else's game. Speaking of themes, there's a theme that is brought up here in this show, being about time and all that. You can probably guess what it is: free will and choice versus fate and destiny. If everything is already written in the sacred timeline, does anyone have a choice in what they do? Even the choices they do make, are they really their own? The characters talk about this a few times throughout the show, but then it's kind of just dropped. No answer or resolution is given to these questions. You can say that, oh well, it's up to the viewers now to make up their own mind about it, but it's not like the story was built around it, around these questions. Like I said, it's brought up a few times in the conversations, and that's it. And the way the story is constructed, it seems as if the story doesn't even matter in the end. So why should we think about it anymore, even? And the pacing of the story. It's not terrible, but it's not that good either, especially the first 2 to 3 episodes. Obviously, with something as big as the TVA being introduced, its rules and implications must be clearly explained, so that's fine with the exposition. But there's a lot of other stuff that felt unnecessary. For example, some time is dedicated to understanding Loki more in depth and how he truly feels and who he really is. But we don't really learn anything new. We've always understood how Loki is not pure and absolute evil. We've seen how he reacted when his mother died, how he basically sacrificed himself to save Thor. So why are we having these conversations? It's like the writers felt they had to straight out have Loki tell us about who he is, how he feels, and why he does what he does. Not a fan of that. This pacing, it gets better later on, but there's a reason the dropout of the viewers was biggest between episodes 1 and 3. It's not a huge problem, it annoyed me a tiny little bit, but I know for some people it was an actual issue. Another thing was the finale. Like I said, I found it okay, satisfying, but others felt like it came too quick. But considering that I believe the show was cut in half, the first season was cut in half because of COVID, and the finale we got was like the midpoint of season one, then I guess it's understandable. Now, despite all the flaws that I just said, overall I enjoyed this show. I don't think it's a waste of time or unnecessary. There were issues again, yes, but the good things in the show cover them or distract you from them. There were good laughs in the show, it was not devoid of humor, and of course there were a lot of Easter eggs in some episodes, which, well, depending on your taste, may be good or bad. The visual effects were solid, acting was solid. I think the show achieved its main goal, setting up the future of the MCU and making me care.